Yeah, we got a couple there. I got 14 people on Meerkat too.
And what do they want to hear on there?
They're listening. A lot of them are listening in over the web, so they don't comment. That's why we never got questions. So, like the people are there. Because unless you're on the app on the phone, you can't comment. So there's 13 people there, but they're watching online.
I'm the credit expert for Fox Business News and all the major networks. I'm a certified FICO Pro that uses the consumer laws to help delete negative information off of credit reports. We have a debt elimination program that focuses on the laws
WFS?
collection, judgments, and charge-offs.
Bill, great, all right, great. We're just finishing up the commercial break in about a minute and a half, and then I'll put you through, and then we'll be right with you afterwards.
888-533-8138. That number again, 888-533-8138.
Well, how come Periscope never tells us what they want us to know, what they want? Maybe they don't want anything?
Yeah, just watch. I mean, a lot of people are.
That won't happen at Movement Mortgage, where your entire loan process is designed to remove the stress and hassle from getting your loan approved quickly. Movement Mortgage is the Inc. 500 fastest growing company in 42 states, including this area, working hard for you. How? At Movement Mortgage, your loan is processed in 7 days, and we underwrite in the first 48 hours.
They underwrite before even you think about buying a house. They underwrite as you walk around.
Yeah, what it
They underwrite when you sleep.
Yeah.
They underwrite without you submitting any documents. They just underwrite it. They just have you approved. They know where you work. They know when you're sleeping. They know when you've been good. They know when you're awake.
It's like a commitment letter.
And we're back. Again, if you would like to join in the conversation today, please give us a call at 914-693-5700. We are talking about realtors. We are talking about the National Association of Realtors and why that is different than just using a licensed real estate agent or broker. We do have Bill Lublin on the line now. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Bill, can you give us a little bit of a bio on yourself? We've been talking about you, and we'd like to introduce you to everyone who's been listening so far.
What's my bio? I'm the CEO of Century 21 Advantage Gold. We're the largest Century 21 company in Pennsylvania. I'm a past president of the Greater Philadelphia Association of Realtors, which was one of the charter members of the 1908 creation of the National Association of Realtors. I have chaired a number of committees for the National Association of Realtors, including the Risk Management Forum, the Professional Standards Forum, the Professional Standards Committee, the Interpretations and Procedures Subcommittee, the Multiple Listing Service Issues and Policies Committee, and I'm currently serving as chair of the MLS Emerging Trends and Technology Advisory Board.
Awesome. So, Bill, what we were just talking about just before you joined us was the difference between a realtor and a licensed salesperson and broker. Many people misunderstand that. They believe that a realtor is someone who's licensed, and that is not the case. It is not synonymous with a licensee. And we already explained what the differences were, but one of the main differences that we discussed was the strict code of ethics that realtors follow. Can you touch on some of that? Because you mentioned a lot of committees that you have chaired, and those committees tie into some of the code of ethics. So I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay, so in 1908, the National Association of Real Estate Exchanges, which became the National Association of Real Estate Boards, which became the National Association of Realtors, was created in 1913 in Winnipeg, Canada, at their 5th annual convention. They adopted the they adopted a code of ethics, which predates most of the license law in the United States and Canada. As a matter of fact, many of the original license laws and original real estate rules and regulations were modeled on the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics. The Code of Ethics is 102 years old. It is, in today's world, it is constantly reviewed and changed. It consists of 17 articles, only one of which deals with money, and that's the obligation of members to arbitrate. And those articles are explained and exemplified by what are called standards of practice. So you might have Article 3 and Standard of Practice 3.1. You can't violate standard of practices because they are merely explanations of situations which would be covered under the prevailing article.
Hey, Bill?
The article from the original time is usually broken down into 3 areas: duties to the public, duties to clients, and duties to other real estate people.
Hi, Bill. This is Scott.
Hi, Scott.
How you doing?
Hi.
2 questions. First is I would love you to explain, because it's a consumer-facing show, how that relates to the person buying or selling, what might be their expectations with regard to using a realtor. And second question, did you stay up last night to watch that game?
No, as a matter of fact, I did not. I had another commitment, but happily, the good guys won.
I was thinking of you.
The Cowgirls lost.
I was rooting hard for the Cowboys because the Giants needed that, but
I understand that. So in my world, it actually was great, not only because we beat the Cowboys, but because we also did it to the detriment of the Giants.
yep, good. 2 for 2 on that. So
Absolutely.
we got the important stuff. I stayed up and went to bed sad.
If it could somehow hurt the Redskins at the same time, it would have been perfect.
The trifecta. So tell me if people are buying and selling, they're going through their local, what they consider to be real estate agent. I don't think, and I doubt you do, they really know the distinction between a realtor and an agent. Why should they, and really what's in it for them if they were to work with it? What's the benefit to working with a realtor?
Well, there's a whole number of things. The first one, and the most obvious one that we've talked about, is that with our code of ethics, there is an additional level of recourse for consumers that feel they have been somehow treated poorly by a real estate professional who's a member of the local, state, and national association of realtors. Secondly, those organizations generally have consumer-facing either ombudsman or educational opportunities, because the local, state, and national associations are generally very active in the communities that they cover. So in Philadelphia, for example, for many years the association had a hotline for consumers to call just with any questions they had, whether they were a landlord or a tenant, a buyer or a seller, or just somebody who had a question about real estate. And we manned it with volunteer real estate professionals. Look, the main reason for dealing with a realtor, I believe, is because people that belong to the local, state, and national associations of realtors and are active in those associations are among the most dedicated to the profession, the most concerned about the consumer, the most educated, and people that voluntarily step up and say, we're going to provide this level of service. We're going to live to these standards which are set up. That's not to say that a non-realtor might not be an ethical or honest person. It's saying that they didn't care enough about the industry to choose to hold themselves to a standard that is generally above and beyond those that are required by the regulators or licensing authorities in each state.
And they also pay for membership in addition to that, so they are paying to step up to subscribe to that code of ethics.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, it's not that there aren't, I'm sure, good people that are not realtors, but the National Association, the local and state associations, do a tremendous amount to protect home ownership, to work with landlords and tenants in their individual marketplaces, to try to fight onerous taxes or burdens on the consumer, and these, I don't think it's an accident. Look, I've taught real estate in the United States, Canada, London, and Dubai. And it's not, every time I go out of the country and I see the difference between the way business is done here and the consumer protections that we've put in place. You know, in Pennsylvania and in many states, the standard agreement of sale is developed by and created for the use of the members of the local association of realtors. When I began in real estate many years ago, there were all kinds of agreements of sale. Attorneys had their own agreements of sale. There were agreements of sale from stationery stores. There were individual companies that had their own agreement of sale. Now in Pennsylvania, a consumer who buys or sells a home using the contracts developed by the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors for use by their members of the state really are working with a standard that was created by volunteers and by staff members over the last century. And that inures to the benefit of everybody in a real estate transaction.
Bill,
you know what it basically should have in it. You know what a basic agreement of sale should have in it. You have places to get explanations of these things. So all of these, the majority of this regulation is championed and moved forward by realtors, not non-realtors. Though some non-realtors, I'm sure, are involved. They're just not doing it in an organized manner.
Right, and the majority are realtors that are showing that type of concern, and they are consumer-centric. So that is that really makes a difference.
Bill, let me touch on something that's very, very different. We're close neighbors, New York to Pennsylvania, but in New York it is not that way. There's nothing even remotely similar to a standard contract except those that the attorneys use, and I guess as limited by the attorney's experience and level of advocacy and even maybe compensation. You could find someone who buys a house in this part of town or a condo in that part of town, very, very different. Then their rights and obligations could be very different, and there are curveballs in there. So it became almost like a bit of a pre-litigation. I know I've told clients that this contract is drafted in anticipation of litigation, and they say, "What? I'm not going to court, am I?" But you might. So that's a big distinction.
Well, that's downstate New York mainly, and it is very different in downstate New York than it is in any other state.
So it's also northern New Jersey. It's also southern Connecticut. This metro area. I mean, South Jersey's definitely not, and North Connecticut definitely.
But in New Jersey, the realtor is providing the contract, and there's a 3-day attorney review.
Right, and there's a New Jersey Association form, just as there are in most of the states. But the area around New York City is sort of an anomaly. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about the majority of the country, you're talking about, and even in those areas, you're still talking about professional standards education is mandatory for realtor members on a biennial basis.
Right, and the only real area that you'll see real estate licensees that are not realtors is in Manhattan. That's probably the only place that I know of that really does not participate in that.
Not surprisingly, Eastern Long Island, because that is Manhattan with nice beaches. But Bill, I wanted to touch on something Erica, I guess Erica's still here, touched on. She said that NAR is 1.1 million strong, and I know you can, we're talking about how the consumer is affected. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm right that one of the greatest victories of our realtor legislative effort is in the mortgage interest deduction. Could you touch on that with the efforts on Capitol Hill, keeping that in place?
Well, look, we feel that the National Association, and I personally feel very strongly about the mortgage interest deduction as a consumer benefit. And, every time there's an economic downturn, people look to that as a way of raising taxes and cutting deductions. But I don't think it's an accident that we are, along with Canada, one of the great nations of homeowners, at least partially because we have that mortgage interest deduction. So there's a number of, there are any number of legislative pieces that the political action committees on both the local, state, and national basis do to foster home ownership.
So what would you say, Bill, let me ask you, what would you say to renters, people maybe starting out, what are the benefits of home ownership, and what does that MID, mortgage interest deduction, offer? What kind of opportunities does that offer?
The benefit of home ownership is that anybody who makes a periodic payment for housing is probably paying a mortgage for someone. You may as well pay it for yourself. I mean, that's the reality of why a renter, you know, with or without the MID. But the truth is, with the mortgage insurance deduction, all of the mortgage interest on your home is deductible, and whatever your whatever rate you're taxed, you know, there's a benefit that you're going to receive. But the benefits of home ownership are far greater than that. Even if there were no MID, you know, the accumulation or acquisition of wealth through real estate, the additional stability that is provided to the family, the fact that when there's a loss of wealth with older people in the United States, it's generally because of a fluctuation in the value of their real estate, because it's hard for people to save large amounts of money. And yet, if they just pay off their mortgage over a period of time, they're left with a very large asset. You know, there were people in the last boom. It was very, very common for people to sell their homes in California and move to Nevada or Arizona, where they could
live like a king
for much less money and pocket a substantial amount of cash.
Right. Well, real estate really does build wealth, and the problem that we had when the market was out of control was that a lot of people started thinking that real estate was a short-term investment, and real estate is always a long-term investment.
Right.
And when you see it that way, you realize that real estate does build wealth.
But even in the last, I've gone through 4 major recessions in my real estate career. And during any of them, I've still never seen a 10-year period where if you bought a home and held it for 10 years, you didn't make money.
That's right.
You know, I mean, it's just...
Right. So even if it goes back, it always comes back stronger than it ever was before.
Well, generally.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I don't know how much stronger it's going to come back this time. We're still not, you know, we're at the beginning of the recovery. A lot of the sales that we've seen the last couple of years have been cash investors and REITs buying single-family homes. So there's a disproportionate number of cash sales, and we still don't have quite the credit liquidity that would be great, but interest rates are low, and any consumer that could buy would be well advised to buy, because the prices tend not to go down over that 10-year period. But 10 years from now, my guess is we'll recognize the interest rates today as historical lows that we won't see for many decades again.
I definitely agree with that.
Sure.
Erica, are you still on the line with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Would you like to add to any of that?
No,
what are you seeing in your area, Erica?
I'm sorry.
What are you seeing in your area?
In our area, it's still a strong buyer's market. And you can buy resale homes here at an amazing discount, much cheaper than you could buy new construction. I just don't know why someone would continue renting for the same amount of money that they could put into an asset that is going to accumulate wealth over the long term. In my area, obviously, prices are lower than your area, but still, someone who is going to pay a monthly fee for a rental and utilities, why not put that into a mortgage? And we are seeing more and more renters finally jump off the fence because the prices in our area are extremely low, and they've probably bottomed out and are going to turn around and have actually started to rise recently. So if you're a renter, get off the fence and jump now before interest rates go up, and you miss this chance.
Yep, that's very good advice. If you are listening to our show and you would like to participate in this conversation here, give us a call at 914-693-5700.
Have you ever been disappointed?
Great information. I knew the MID is a killer topic. That's everything. You really believe that there could even be real estate without the MID?
I do, but I mean, I think it's good that we got it. I mean, look, realtors are out there and they're lobbying all the time. We're probably the largest